Do you ever pull into a truck stop and it just feels off? Like something's waiting for you in the shadows, or the ground under your tires is a little too sticky? Well, I learned the hard way that not every place is just a pit stop for the weary traveler. Some places, they have a way of keeping you forever. I'd been driving for 10 hours straight when I saw the flicker of the neon lights in the distance. It wasn't much, just a little roadside truck stop in the middle of nowhere. The kind of place you'd drive by without a second thought if you weren't desperate for gas or a bathroom. But I was desperate. My rig had been sputtering for the last few miles, and I could already feel my eyelids drooping. I'd driven across half the country in the past 48 hours, chasing deadlines and hauling freight no one cared to track. The hum of the engine was starting to feel like a lullaby, and I knew if I didn't stop soon I'd end up off the road, wrapped around a tree or worse. So I pulled in. The truck stop was one of those old, faded places, the kind you'd expect to see in a dusty postcard from the 70s, back when truckers were legends and highways were still paved with stories. The place looked like it hadn't seen a real upgrade in decades, but there was something about it that made you feel like you were stepping into a time capsule. A big rig sat parked at one of the pumps, an old Kenworth, rust-colored and battered, like it had seen better days. A few other trucks were scattered around, but no drivers. That was weird. Usually there's at least a couple of guys getting fuel or grabbing snacks. But it was quiet. Too quiet. I parked my rig near the diner and killed the engine. The silence outside was unsettling, like the air itself was holding its breath. I stretched my legs, trying to shake off the fatigue, but the moment I stepped out of the truck I could feel it, a kind of heaviness in the air. Like the ground beneath me was a little too solid, the asphalt a little too slick. I made my way to the diner door, the overhead sign flickering. The inside was dim, lit only by the soft glow of neon and a couple of old lamps that looked like they were from the last century. The smell of grease and stale coffee hit me immediately. But there was something else, something odd hanging in the air. A metallic tang that I couldn't quite place. I was about to pull open the door when it swung open on its own. The man who came out was tall, with broad shoulders and a greasy-looking jumpsuit that was worn at the elbows. His face was hidden by a mess of dark hair, but I could tell his eyes were sharp. Too sharp. "Y'all need some help?" His voice was gruff, like a motor idling at low speed. I nodded, shifting my weight from one foot to the other. "Truck's been acting up. Thought I'd stop for a bit." He eyed me for a second, like he was measuring me up. Then his gaze slid over to the truck, the one that had been parked at the far pump. "I can take a look at her," he said. "We don't get too many rigs around here that need help, but we've got everything you'll need." I frowned. "That's kind of strange, isn't it? For a truck stop to not get many trucks?" He chuckled, a low, throaty sound that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "This place doesn't get a lot of business, but the ones that come through, they stay for a while." "Stay for a while?" I asked, confused. The man smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "You'll see," he said, and then he turned, heading toward the back of the diner where an old garage door was half open. "Follow me." I didn't really want to follow him. In fact, something inside me screamed to just get in my truck and drive off. But the need for sleep, combined with the state of my rig, made me follow anyway. It didn't help that he was already halfway to the garage when I took my first step toward the door. The inside of the garage smelled like oil and something worse, something I couldn't quite place. The man led me to the back of the room, past an assortment of old tires, engine parts, and a few half-finished trucks scattered around the floor. A faint buzzing noise came from the corner of the room where an old light flickered on and off, casting long shadows across the cracked concrete. "So, what's wrong with her?" the man asked, motioning toward my truck. I opened the hood and let out a sigh of relief. "Engine's running a little rough. I've had to top off the fluids a couple of times. Thought it might just need a quick checkup, maybe an oil change. Or something." The man didn't respond right away. He just stood there, staring at the engine like he was sizing it up. He reached into a drawer near the workbench and pulled out a thick bottle of axle grease. It had a faded label, something handwritten on the side in red marker. I didn't think much of it at first, but then he uncapped it, the smell of oil and something else. Something metallic, stronger than the usual grease, wafting up, "You'll need this," he said, his voice now oddly quiet. "It'll keep her running for a long time." "Long time?" I asked, "and what's in it?" "Something that'll make her run smooth," he replied, his voice oddly flat. "Real smooth." I felt a sudden unease crawl up my spine, but I didn't say anything. My truck had needed help, and I was too tired to argue. He applied the grease around the engine, his movements smooth and practiced, like he had done this 1,000 times before. He didn't talk much while he worked, just muttered under his breath occasionally. But the more I watched him, the more I realized something wasn't right. When he finished, he wiped his hands off and gave a small nod, like he was pleased with his work. "There," he said. "That'll do it. Should keep you running for a long time now." I stared at the truck, feeling a strange connection to it, like it was more than just a vehicle now, like it had been changed. "Thanks," I said slowly, still unsure. "How much do I owe you?" The man waved his hand. "Don't worry about it. You're a guest here. The truck stays for free." I raised an eyebrow. "Stays?" He gave me a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Everything stays here, and eventually." I spent the night in one of the old rooms behind the diner, the kind of place where the wallpaper was peeling off in strips and the air smelled like mothballs and stale cigarette smoke. At first I thought I might get some rest, but every time I closed my eyes I could hear the hum of that greasy axle grease, the strange buzzing noise coming from the garage, and the man's cold smile. I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling. The clock on the wall had no hands, and no matter how hard I stared at it, the second hand never moved. I could hear the sound of my heart beating in time with the tick, tick, tick that didn't exist. It was like the place was suspended in time, and I was just stuck in it. The thought made me uneasy, but I was too tired to care. Around 3 a.m. I heard the first knock on my door, a slow rhythmic tap, 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 tap. I got up, half asleep, and opened it. It was the man, his greasy jumpsuit now slick with more grease than before and his eyes darker than I remembered. "Figured you'd want some coffee," he said, holding out a cup. I stared at him for a moment, trying to shake off the fog in my brain. Thanks, I guess." "Don't mention it." He leaned in just enough to make me feel uncomfortable. "You did the right thing bringing your rig here. A lot of people drive past. They never realize what they're missing." His grin spread wide, and for a moment his teeth looked almost too white, too perfect, too unnatural. "Right," I muttered, grabbing the cup. The coffee was thick, almost syrupy, but I took a sip anyway. It tasted like burnt rubber and old oil. Exactly what I needed. At least that's what I told myself. "About your truck," he said, his voice dropping low. "It'll be fine. Now you're part of the family now." I set the cup down, my stomach tightening. "What do you mean by that?" He chuckled darkly, his gaze flicking to the window. "You'll understand in time. Things around here, they don't work like they do out there." He waved his hand toward the road, like he was dismissing the world beyond the truck stop. I was about to ask what he meant when the sound of an engine revving caught my attention. It was coming from the garage. The man smiled, a knowing smile. "That's one of our regulars. They're always leaving, but they never get too far." I didn't like the sound of that, not one bit. I turned back toward the door, ready to go back to bed, but he stopped me. "You'll get used to it, but trust me, this place isn't like any other truck stop." I figured that much. He didn't reply. Instead, he just nodded, his eyes flicking toward the truck parked outside my room. I could see the dim glow of the taillights in the distance, as though it was waiting for me to stay. He turned and left, shutting the door behind him with a soft click. I stood there for a while, listening to the faint rumble of engines, the low hum of distant tires on asphalt. But there was something wrong with it. Like the noise was coming from all directions at once, or nowhere at all. I made my decision. I wasn't staying any longer. I'd had enough. I was out of there. By the time I made it to the garage, the truck was parked outside, ready to go. But the man wasn't there anymore. Instead, another figure was leaning against the truck, a tall, skinny guy with greasy black hair and a face that looked like it had been run through a meat grinder. He was staring at my rig with a strange intensity, his lips twitching like he was about to say something. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked over at me, his expression unchanging. "Yeah, you're one of the new ones, huh?" I nodded, not sure if I was supposed to say anything else. He stared at me for another long second before stepping forward. "You see, you don't leave here the way you came, not unless you're special." His voice was flat, and his eyes gleamed with something dark behind them. "I don't understand what you mean," I said, my voice tightening. The man didn't answer at first. Instead, he walked around my truck, running his hands over the tires like he was checking for something. "Not everyone gets the grease. Not everyone gets to stay, but you'll see soon enough, won't you?" He was still walking around the truck when I turned to go, but before I could make it back to the diner, I heard a loud bang from behind. I mean, like a door slamming shut. I spun around, but the garage door was still wide open. The truck I had seen parked earlier, the rust-colored Kenworth, was gone, and in its place was an empty stall. I felt a chill creep up my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, and that's when I noticed it. The smell. That same metallic tang I'd smelled when I first pulled into the place. It was stronger now, more pungent. But this time, it wasn't just coming from the garage. It was coming from the ground. Looked down and there it was. Grease. But not the kind you use to oil up an engine. This was thick, dark. The ground around my truck was coated in it, dripping out from the cracks in the pavement. I took a step back, and then another. The grease followed, spreading, crawling slowly toward me like it had a mind of its own. I turned and ran toward the diner, my heart hammering in my chest. I made it inside and slammed the door behind me, gasping for air. But the moment I stepped through the threshold, everything went silent. The engines, the grease, the voices, all of it stopped. The diner was empty now. No one sitting at the booths, no one behind the counter. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. The same clock that had no hands. The same clock that had been ticking too loud the night before. And then, just as I was about to sit down, a voice cut through the silence. "You can't leave." Not now. It was the man. The greasy mechanic. He was standing at the door, blocking the exit. His smile was wider now, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "You'll be here a lot longer than you think." I couldn't shake the image of that dark, oily grease creeping toward me like it had a life of its own. It felt like the whole damn place was closing in around me, a noose tightening with each second I stayed. I turned to face the mechanic, standing there in the doorway, his presence so solid and ominous that it seemed to swallow the light around him. He was blocking the only exit, a thin smirk on his face as he watched me squirm. I took a step back, my pulse pounding in my ears. "You can't leave," he repeated, voice as cold and flat as the grease that coated everything in sight. "Not now. Not after what we've done." I wanted to scream at him, to demand why this was happening, but no words came out. I wasn't sure what terrified me more, the man himself or the fact that the clock on the wall was still ticking, even though it had no hands. I glanced over at it. Tick, tick, tick. It was almost as if the sound was measuring the time, counting down to something. I tried to move past him, but he shifted, blocking my path without a word. His eyes were too wide, too knowing. There was no kindness, no empathy, just that cold, mechanical stare. "Let me out," I finally managed to say, my voice shaking. "You're not the first to say that," he replied, his lips curling into something between a grin and a grimace. "And you won't be the last." He stepped aside just enough for me to see something beyond him, something I hadn't noticed before. There, standing in the middle of the diner, was the Kenworth, the same rusty truck that had been parked out by the pumps earlier. But now, it was in the middle of the room, a hulking mass of metal and grease. The whole truck was dripping with dark, sticky oil, but it wasn't the grease that caught my eye. It was the driver. He was slumped over the wheel, his body limp. His face was barely visible beneath his greasy hair, but what I could see of it made my stomach twist. His skin was pale, unnaturally so, and his eyes were closed, but there was something about the way his hands were gripping the steering wheel that made my blood run cold. It was as if he wasn't driving anymore. He was just waiting. "That's Rick," the mechanic said, as though he could see the dread in my eyes. "He's been here longer than anyone, doesn't talk much anymore, but he's a good one." a reliable one. "What happened to him?" I asked, my voice barely above. A whisper. The mechanic chuckled, the sound like metal scraping on metal. "What happens to all of them sooner or later?" I stepped closer, trying to get a better look at Rick, but something stopped me. A strange pull in the pit of my stomach, like I wasn't supposed to be getting too close. The mechanic must have seen it too, because he stepped in front of me, blocking my view of the truck. "You'll understand soon enough," he said, his eyes flicking to the back of the diner. "But you're not ready for that yet." The air was thick now, suffocating. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My chest was tight, and my head was spinning. I needed to get out. I needed to run. But the mechanic kept blocking every exit. I felt like a mouse trapped in a corner with nowhere to turn. "Why can't I leave?" I asked, my voice cracking. "What's happening here?" The mechanic didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned, walking toward the back of the diner like he hadn't heard me at all. His boots clicked on the floor in time with the ticking of the clock. I was starting to get dizzy from the sound of it, the constant, relentless tick, tick, tick. It was like I could feel it in my bones, counting down to something terrible. He reached the back door and paused. "I'll show you," he said. Then, without waiting for a response, he pushed the door open. The back of the diner was even worse than the garage. It smelled of rust and grease and something otherworldly. A corridor stretched out in front of me, lined with old tools, strange metal, contraptions I couldn't even recognize, and empty crates stacked high against the walls. Everything seemed to be covered in a layer of thick black grease. The grease. I wasn't sure if it was the same as what was on the truck, but it felt the same. Heavy, ominous, like it was alive. "You need to understand what's going on here," the mechanic said, his voice echoing through the hallway. "This place isn't just for trucks, it's for everyone who's ever been stuck here. They're all part of it now." I took another step forward, my heart pounding, and I could feel the walls closing in, the grease getting thicker, heavier. The hallway felt like it was growing longer than it should have been. "Part of what?" I asked, though I didn't want to know the answer. He turned, his face hard and cold. "And part of the place. Once a truck stops here, it never leaves, and neither do the drivers. Not unless you've got something we need." My mind was spinning. "What do you mean, something you need?" He gestured down the hallway toward a thick steel door at the end. The door was dark, scratched, and old, the handle rusted from years of neglect. It looked like it hadn't been opened in decades. "Every truck needs something to keep it running," the mechanic said. "And every driver needs something to keep them bound." I took a step back, my eyes wide. "You're saying you trap people here?" He didn't smile, didn't even blink. "We don't trap anyone. The trucks are the ones that keep them. Here, once you've used the grease, you can't leave. The trucks won't let you." I froze, the realization sinking in like a stone in my stomach. I looked back at the door, my legs suddenly too weak to move. There was something behind that door, something that didn't belong in the real world. I could feel it in the air, the oppressive weight of it pressing down on me. Something terrible, something that needed to be fed. "That's where it happens," the mechanic said, his voice softening. "That's where we all go eventually." Before I could ask what he meant, the sound of tires grinding against the asphalt filled the air. The mechanic's smile returned, cold, sharp, and knowing. "The next one's here," he said simply, "and he's going to need our help." I don't know how much time passed while I stood there, staring at the rusted steel door at the end of the corridor. The mechanic's words echoed in my mind, but they didn't make sense. The idea that trucks were somehow keeping people here, trapping them here, felt impossible. This couldn't be happening. I had to be dreaming. The place was just a run-down truck stop, right? But the more I thought about it, the less I believed that. The air was thicker now, heavier. Every breath felt like I was inhaling something thick and wet, like the very air was steeped in grease. The mechanic just stood there watching me as I tried to get my bearings, and then, without warning, he turned and started walking toward the door at the end of the hallway. I hesitated. For a moment I thought about bolting, about running back to my truck and just leaving. Screw the repairs, screw the whole damn place. But something kept me rooted to the spot. Some twisted curiosity, or maybe some deep, unexplainable pull to the door. "Come on," the mechanic called over his shoulder. "You wanted to know. You're about to learn how far this goes." I followed him, my footsteps feeling strange on the old greasy floors. I was getting more and more nauseous, and the smell was overwhelming now, thick and pungent like rancid oil mixed with something worse, something sour. But there was nothing in me that could stop me from walking forward. The mechanic didn't say a word as he reached the door and pulled it open, the hinges creaking in protest. What lay beyond was so far from anything I could have expected that I almost froze. Inside was a room that defied all logic, all reason. The walls were covered in maps of highways and roads, places I recognized and some I didn't. But none of them led anywhere I could make sense of. There were roads that led into mountains that shouldn't exist, roads that twisted in impossible ways, looping back on themselves. The roads didn't connect with the world I knew, and in the middle of the room was a giant, open pit, black and endless. It wasn't just dark. It was the kind of darkness that swallowed light, that made you feel like the space around you was alive, waiting. And around the pit were dozens of trucks, each one older than the last, all lined up as if they had been parked here for decades. Their engines were still running, the exhaust pipes puffing out black smoke that curled up toward the ceiling and dissipated into the air. I stepped into the room, the stench of burning fuel and grease hitting me like a physical blow. I had to cover my nose and mouth with my sleeve to stop from gagging. The mechanic gestured toward the pit. "This is where it starts," he said, his voice low. "This is where all the trucks come from, and this is where they go." I couldn't breathe. I could barely move. "What are you talking about?" I rasped. "Every road leads here, every driver, every truck, they all end up here," he said, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Once you're in, once you're part of the family, you don't leave." My heart was pounding now, the reality of the situation sinking in like cold water. "The trucks," I whispered, the pieces falling into place. "They're not just vehicles. They're alive." He nodded slowly. "Alive in their own way. And so are the people who drive them. This place feeds on them, keeps them running. Once they're here, they're never going anywhere again." I stepped back, panic rising in my chest. "This can't be real. This can't be happening." The mechanic didn't respond right away. He just stepped toward one of the trucks, a massive rig with a faded red paint job and a chrome grille that gleamed in the dim light. He ran his hand over the hood, the grease on his fingers smearing across it like blood. The truck revved to life with a deep guttural growl that sent shivers down my spine. "That's the thing," he said, turning toward me. "You're not meant to leave. You're meant to stay. Everyone who drives through here, whether they realize it or not, they're part of the road, part of the machine. And when the time comes when it's your turn to stop, you'll be just like the rest of them. You'll be bound to this place just like me, just like the others." I looked around at the trucks in the room. They were all different, all with unique markings, colors, and shapes. But something about them was the same. Their engines hummed in sync, as though they were alive and breathing. As if they were waiting for something. And then a soft sound broke the stillness, the sound of wheels turning. I turned to see another truck rolling out from the far corner of the room. It was old, the paint chipped and faded, the tires were practically bald, and the lights flickered as it moved toward the pit. The truck didn't stop. It just kept rolling forward until it reached the edge of the pit, the tires skimming over the greasy surface of the floor. And then, without warning, the truck dropped right into the pit. It wasn't just a simple fall. The way it dropped was unnatural, like the air itself had swallowed it whole. There was no crash, no sound of the truck hitting anything, just silence. Then, after a long beat, the mechanic spoke, his voice softer than before. "It's time." I turned to him, my body shaking, my breath shallow. "Time for what?" He took a step closer, his eyes now burning with an almost feverish intensity. "Time for you to decide. The truck you're driving out there, the one that's waiting for you, it's not just any truck, it's special, it's part of the road." I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin. The mechanic's words were like needles piercing my mind. I couldn't think straight, couldn't breathe. The walls were closing in again. "Once you use the grease," he continued, his tone like he was explaining something very simple, "you're tied to it. You're bound to the road, just like the others. And when the time comes, your truck will need you. And you'll need it. I backed away, eyes wide. I don't understand. I just want to leave. I just want to get back to the road. The mechanic's grin widened and he stepped aside, motioning toward the door. You can leave, but only if you leave your truck behind. I froze. The thought of leaving my rig behind was unthinkable. I had worked too damn hard for it. It was my life. But in that moment I realized that my truck, just like me, might never really be mine. Maybe it had already been claimed. I turned toward the door, unable to speak, but the mechanic's voice followed me. You'll be back, he called. They all come back. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the truck sliding into the pit, disappearing like it had never existed. I heard the low rumble of idling engines and the soft tick-tick-tick of a clock that still didn't have hands. I sat in the cab of my truck, staring through the windshield at the garage, the diner, the blinking neon sign that buzzed like a dying fly in a jar. I wanted to leave. My hands were on the wheel, the keys were in the ignition. But my truck wouldn't start. It didn't sputter, it didn't crank, it just refused, like it knew. The smell of the grease, the same thick, foul scent from the garage, was everywhere now. I could feel it in the seat, the wheel, even the air vents. It was in the damn air. It felt like the truck was breathing with me. Inhaling and exhaling, its rhythm synced to mine. That was when the radio crackled to life. I hadn't touched it. It hadn't worked in years. But now, at 3:33 in the morning, it buzzed and hissed like it was tuning itself. A low voice came through, varied in static, garbled at first, then clearer. You shouldn't have left the grease house. I froze. The voice was slow and slurred, like someone talking underwater. But I recognized the tone. It was the mechanic. You're bound now. Truck won't move without it. The transmission faded, static washing over his words like waves on a dead beach. Then another voice cut through, this one higher, desperate. He's lying, they all lie, the grease, it eats you. Silence. Then you can burn it out, but it'll scream. And then the radio went dead. I didn't wait, I popped the hood and climbed out. The sky was still dark, but a strip of dusty blue was forming on the horizon. Morning was coming. Somehow I had to get out before it fully arrived. I yanked open the oil cap and took a breath. There was grease in the engine, thick and black, pulsing like a living thing. It moved when I touched it, recoiled. I grabbed an old rag from the side compartment and wrapped it around a stick. Then I did something stupid. I lit it. I shoved the burning rag into the engine. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, the grease screeched. It wasn't a sound from the engine. It was inside my head. A raw, shrieking wail like metal grinding on bone. My ears rang. My knees buckled. The whole truck shuddered violently, as if something inside it was trying to claw its way out. I stumbled back, eyes wide, watching the fire dance along the edge of the grease. But instead of burning up, the grease started to pull away, slithering deeper into the engine like it was hiding. The fire guttered out. The engine went still again. And then the truck turned over. Just once, a low guttural varm like it was trying to wake up, but it died just as quickly. You burned it. I turned. The voice wasn't the mechanic's this time. It was a woman. She was standing at the edge of the pumps, her eyes shadowed beneath a trucker's cap, jacket too big for her frame. I hadn't seen her before. Her rig, if she had one, was nowhere in sight. You're one of them, I said. She shook her head. I was. For a time. Long enough to know the rules. What rules? She stepped closer, glancing toward the diner to make sure no one was watching. The grease binds. Once it's in your truck, it's in you, and the longer you stay, the more it feeds. It's not just oil, it's memory, muscle, soul. That's why it screams. My stomach turned. How do you know that? She held up her hand. Her fingers were black to the knuckles, stained with a slick tar-like shine that shimmered faintly in the dawn light. I tried to cut it out. Thought if I bled it out, I could leave. She gave a hollow laugh. Didn't work? I swallowed hard. So we're stuck, she nodded. Unless you give it what it wants. What's that? She glanced toward the garage. You've seen the pit? Yeah. Then you already know. So I sat on the hood of my truck until the sun crept up enough to burn the horizon into red and orange. The mechanic came out eventually, stretching like a man who'd slept too well. He looked at me and shook his head. You tried to fight it. he said. I didn't deny it. He walked past, wiped his hands on a rag, and opened the diner. You'll come around. They all do. No one drives forever. I sat there a while longer, and then I opened the glove box. There was a photo of my rig. Taped inside, me and the truck from 3 years back. Back when I'd bought her off a retiring hauler down in El Paso. I thought I was starting something new, but maybe I hadn't bought her. Maybe she had chosen me. By noon, I was on the highway again, or I thought I was. The sky was wrong. The sun didn't move. The horizon never changed. Mile markers were missing, and the asphalt felt softer under the wheels, like the road wasn't real anymore. I passed the same dry billboard 4 times. Free coffee at Eddie's, next exit. There was no Eddie's, and when I looked in the mirror, the truck stop was still behind me. Always. Still. Waiting. You ever drive so long that the road stops making sense? I mean, you see the same stretch of blacktop, same scrub brush and sun-scorched. Signs over and over. Your brain tells you it's a new mile, a new hour, but your gut knows different. Like the world's on a loop, playing the same scene until it breaks you down enough to fit in. That's what it felt like now. I'd been driving for hours, maybe days. The sun never dipped, the highway never curved, and every so often I'd catch a glimpse of the mechanic's face in the rear view just for a second, like he was riding shotgun in my shadow. The grease hadn't burned out. Not really. I'd pissed it off, wounded it, but it was still in the truck, still in me. I could feel it, like blood that had turned thick and cold, and the rig, it was changing. Little things at first, the dashboard lights flickering even when I didn't turn them on. The speedometer needle twitching even though I wasn't speeding up. Then came the humming, low at first, mechanical, like an engine idling under the floorboards. But it was more than that. It had a rhythm, a voice. Turn back, it whispered. Through the vents, echoed in the static on the radio, showed up in greasy handprints on the windshield that I hadn't left. I tried to ignore it. I kept pushing forward, hoping maybe, just maybe, if I hit enough miles I'd punch through whatever spell this place had on me. But the road never changed, and then came the fog. It rolled in from the horizon like a slow, grey tide. No headlights. Could cut through it. No brights, no fog lamps. Just this dense, suffocating mist that swallowed everything. I slowed the truck to a crawl. Visibility dropped to nothing. I could barely see the hood, let alone the highway lines. I should have stopped. Should have waited. But I didn't. Something inside me, something not me, kept my foot on the pedal, like the grease had spread into the wiring of my thoughts. I wasn't driving anymore. I was being driven. That's when the pavement ended. Just like that. The road I'd been following, this endless looping stretch of asphalt, just disappeared beneath me. 1 second rubber on road next, gravel, then dirt, then nothing. The fog broke like a curtain being drawn, and the truck rolled to a stop. I was back. The truck stop stood exactly as I'd left it, the diner buzzing under its flickering neon. The garage doors open like a mouth ready to swallow me whole. I'd driven in a circle, or maybe the road had decided to bring me back. I stepped out of the cab, legs trembling, breath coming in shallow gasps. The air here felt wrong, thicker, heavier, like the grease had seeped into the sky. The mechanic was waiting, of course, grease-streaked jumpsuit, that permanent, oil-slick grin. "Told you," he said. "They always come back." "What the hell is this place?" I asked, my voice raw. He smiled wider. "It's the last mile, the mile that never ends. You can drive all you want, but unless the road lets you go, you're just another cog in the wheel." I stepped closer, my fists clenched. "Then how? Do I end it?" The mechanic tilted his head just a little. "You don't end it, you feed it. That's when the rumble started. Low, deep, a sound that came up through the soles of my boots and settled in my bones. The pit, the one I saw. In the map room, it was opening again. The truck started moving, not all at once. One by one, like they were lining up for sacrifice. The mechanic handed me a can, a dented metal oil canister. "Your rig's still hungry," he said. "One more dose, 1 more mile, and maybe you'll find your way out." I looked down at the can. It was warm, not from the sun, from inside. I could hear something moving in it, like whispers in a jar. Then I looked at my truck. The hood had changed, more chrome now, the edges sharper, the headlights almost watching me. I realized then, the truck didn't belong to me anymore. I belonged to it. I had one match left, one rag, one last shot at freedom. I shoved the oil can into the cab, drenched the seat, the wheel, the dash. The truck began to writhe, like it knew what I was doing. It screamed, the same high-pitched, soul-shattering shriek I'd heard in the garage. But I didn't stop. I struck the match. The fire bloomed instantly, a wall of orange and black that painted the mechanic in flickering shadows. He didn't move, just smiled. "You can burn the truck," he said, "but the road? The road keeps turning." And then everything exploded into fire. I woke up in the desert. No truck, no road, no mechanic, just sand, and heat, and silence. For a moment I thought I was free. I laughed, giddy, wild, desperate. Then I saw it, a small patch of grease in the sand, still fresh, still moving, and from the distance I heard it. Next exit, Eddie's, free coffee. I never found another truck, didn't need one. The grease finds a way. Sometimes I see other drivers, guys like me, sitting at diners off Highway 9, Highway 34, little places that don't show up on maps. They look lost, hollowed out, grease, under their nails and shadows in their eyes, and I know. They've driven the last mile too, and they'll never stop. Because the road never ends, and neither does the grease. You ever hear about the load that drives the driver? No? Then buckle up, because once I tell you about Cargo 47, you're never going to look at a long haul the same way again. All right, picture this. It's late October, maybe the 26th or 27th. The kind of night where the sky feels too low and the road stretches too far. Cold seeps in through the vents even with the heat cranked, and the only thing louder than the engine is the static on the CB. That was the night I took the job. Now, I ain't proud to admit it, but I'd been running low on fuel money, and when dispatch called with a last-minute high-pay gig, well, I didn't ask too many questions. They told me it was hush-hush, special freight, route already planned, no stops, no detours, just me, the truck, and whatever the hell was in that trailer. Marked Cargo 47 didn't seem all that weird at first. Companies run all kinds of top-secret junk out here. Government contracts, prototype tech, even celebrity body doubles. Yeah, that's a thing. I've seen some strange stuff in this job, but nothing like 47. The trailer was hooked and sealed. When I got to the yard, plain white box, no logos, no labels, just a big red stencil across the back doors that said, 47, do not open. Kinda dramatic, right? I shrugged it off, popped into the cab, punched in the GPS and noticed something odd. There was no destination, just a long, highlighted path that seemed to stretch into nowhere. It was just marked, run. I stared at that for a good 30 seconds before I laughed. Thought maybe someone was screwing with me. I mean, I've pulled loads for 20 years. There's always an address, a name, a dock. But this time, just run. I figured maybe it was some kind of test route, government stuff. I'd haul the thing into the desert or up some back road in Montana, drop it, and drive off fat and happy. But that's not what happened, not even close. The first couple hours were smooth. Nothing but the hum of tires on asphalt and a playlist full of old rock and static-filled late-night radio. I even forgot about the weird label on the trailer. It was just another night drive, you know? The kind that eats up the miles and numbs your brain. But around 2:30 a.m., somewhere between Kansas City and God knows where, I noticed something strange. I didn't remember passing through Wichita. Hell, I didn't remember passing anything at all. Just road. Road and fog. Endless. I started trying to retrace in my head where I'd gassed up, where I'd stopped for coffee, but nothing came back. No memory of pit stops, no fuel receipts, just black space in my head, like I'd blinked and lost. Hours. I chalked it up to fatigue. Happens more than you'd think. The road plays tricks on you, especially when you're hauling through the graveyard shift. So I pulled over at a little roadside pullout. No lights, no signage, just one of those ghost stops where time feels thinner than the air. I stepped out of the cab, stretched my legs, and lit a smoke. Cold wind sliced through my jacket, and I could see my breath rise in the dark. That's when I heard it, a low mechanical hum, coming from the trailer. Now listen, I've pulled medical gear, radioactive stuff, even a tank once, but nothing ever made a sound like this. It wasn't just a hum, it was rhythmic, like breathing. Like something inside was alive and pacing. Backed away slow, trying to decide if I should call dispatch or just say screw it and drive until daylight. But something, some stupid curiosity or stubborn pride, kept me there another second too long. The hum stopped. Dead silence. Then, thud, from inside the trailer. Just one, but loud enough to shake the frame. I jumped back into the cab so fast I knocked my coffee all over the seat. I started the engine, threw it in drive, and peeled out, tires squealing against the frost-glazed pavement. Screw the bonus. Screw the secrecy. I didn't sign up for haunted freight. Now, here's where things get weird. Real weird. 10 minutes. After I took off, I looked down at the dash and froze. Odometer 0.0 trip meter, main everything reset. My hand hovered over the wheel. I tapped the dash, thinking maybe the display glitched. Nothing. I checked the phone, GPS was gone. Just a black screen and a spinning icon that said loading route. I was somewhere, but not on any map I had. Worse, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the face staring back. Not in that moment. I mean, I knew it was Mina, but I couldn't remember my name, couldn't remember who I was, just that I had a job and cargo to deliver. Chapter 2. The reset you ever wake up in a place. You thought you'd never been, but everything still feels familiar. That's what it felt like. Barreling down a dead straight highway that didn't seem to curve or climb, with no road signs, no mile markers, no exits. Just two lanes stretching ahead into a grey that wasn't quite fog and wasn't quite night. I was awake, I was sure of that, but everything else gone. My name, nothing where I'd been born. No clue, family, job, why I was even driving. Blank. Only thing I knew deep in my bones, was that I had to keep going. Couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. Not until the job was done. Like it had been hardwired into my damn skull. And then, just like that, the dashboard dinged. Time reset 000. What the hell? The clock on the truck's dash, the GPS, even my watch, all synced to 0 like I'd just stepped into some kind of twisted new game level. A fresh run. A restart. I reached over, trying to adjust the dash settings, maybe reboot the system. No dice. Buttons did nothing. Touchscreen just flickered. In the reflection of the black screen, I caught a glimpse of myself again. And here's the kicker. I looked older. Not by years, but by miles. Like the kind of wear and tear you see in a driver who hasn't slept in days. Bloodshot eyes. Grease smudged across my cheek, unshaven, skin a little saggy, like it had been dragged through something heavy. But I didn't feel tired, just empty, as if every mile I put between me and the last gas station was chewing a little more of me away. A low vibration ran through the floorboards. Not the usual rumble of a semi. This was deeper, like the kind of tremor that sets off instinct before reason. I sat up straighter, gripped the wheel tight. Then I heard it again. That hum. Not from the engine. Not from the tires. From the trailer. Cargo 47. Still sealed. Still locked. But now the hum wasn't constant. It pulsed. Like a heartbeat. Da-dum. Da-dum, da-dum, slow, heavy. Like whatever was inside had synced itself with me. Or maybe I'd synced to it. I flicked the dome light on, reaching for the manifest packet I kept tucked above the visor. There wasn't one. No paperwork. No clipboard. No signatures. Just a sticky note I didn't remember writing that said, "Keep driving, don't look back." Great. Cryptic horror movie advice from myself. Real comforting. Then, somewhere around mile marker God knows what, the CB crackled. Just static at first, then a voice fuzzy and strained. "Unit 47, do you copy?" I blinked. Was that me? I reached for the mic. Yeah. This is 47? My voice came out hoarse, uncertain. The line went silent for a second, then, "Do not stop, do not engage, memory degradation at 17%. Maintain route. Reset will occur in 80 miles. What reset? Who the hell is this? I snapped. adrenaline flooding my veins. No response. Just that low rhythmic hum behind me. I tried calling dispatch. Tried every emergency number I had saved. Nothing. Phones were dead. The only thing that worked was that damn CB, and even then, only when they felt like talking. Whoever they were, with nothing else to do, I drove, mile after mile, through a landscape that didn't change, no towns, no signs of life. Just that pale grey stretch of road and the steady whisper of tires against cracked asphalt. And then I saw something that made me nearly slam the brakes. A truck, parked on the shoulder. Lights off. Trailer same as mine. Marked 47I, pulled alongside it, heart hammering. The cab door was open. Driver's seat empty, but smeared across the inside of the windshield, written in what looked like, blood, were 3 words. I forgot first. I stared at it, stomach doing somersaults. Then I noticed the dashboard inside that cab, still glowing, same setup as mine, same reset timer. 000, and below it, blinking red, reset failed. I peeled out of there so fast I nearly jackknifed. My rig fishtailed before finding grip. Tires screamed. I didn't care. I needed distance. I needed to forget I ever saw that thing. But something told me. That driver. He used to be me. By the time I hit what should have been 80 miles, things got worse. I passed a sign. White blank, not even a number. Then another truck. Same make, same trailer, same blood-streaked cab. I didn't stop this time. I couldn't. I was afraid if I did, I'd see myself in the seat, eyes wide, skin frozen, mouth hanging open in some endless scream. But I swear, as I flew past it, the headlights flicked on, and in the side mirror I caught a glimpse of something climbing out of the back of that trailer. You ever drive so long that the road stops being a road and starts feeling like a treadmill? Like the world's moving, sure, but you're not getting anywhere. You're just stuck, staring into the horizon that never gets any closer. That's where I was, somewhere between mile marker nowhere and mental breakdown. I must have been driving for hours, maybe days, but my fuel gauge never moved. My hands were clamped to the wheel so tight my knuckles ached, but I didn't remember the last time I blinked. And the timer on the dash? Still at 000, no matter how far I went, the damn thing never ticked forward. Just sat there staring at me like it was waiting for something. And then there were the trucks. Every few miles, I'd pass another one. Same model, same trailer, same red 47 stenciled on the side. Sometimes they were on the shoulder, sometimes halfway buried in a ditch. Once one was sitting sideways across both lanes, jackknifed like it had been there for decades, rusted down to bone, every one of them empty. No drivers, no signs of a struggle. Just absence, like the driver had never existed at all, or worse, like they'd never left. That was when the voices started. Faint at first, static layered with whispers. I thought it was the CB again, but the mic light wasn't on. Then I thought it might be the radio, but the stereo wouldn't even power up. The voices were coming from the trailer. I turned off the engine, rolled down the window, and sat in silence. Nothing but wind. Then, softly, right behind me. How? Many more miles? A whisper. Clear as glass, right up against the back wall of the cab. I froze, didn't breathe. How many more until you forget? The words hit like ice water down my spine. I whipped around and stared at the sleeper bunk behind me. Empty. Just me and whatever the hell was in that sealed box I was hauling. That night, if you can even call it that, since the sun never really rose or set, I started seeing shapes in the mirrors, flickers, shadows, people walking down the side of the road, pale hands gripping guardrails, headlights in the rear view that never passed. At first I thought I was hallucinating, sleep deprivation, highway hypnosis, whatever. Then I looked in the side mirror and saw something that made me punch the gas like the devil himself was hanging off my bumper. It was a version of me, driving the same truck, same trailer, same look. In his eyes, except his were black. Not bloodshot, not tired, just he's gone. And the reflection, it waved at me. Not with a full arm, just a few fingers. Real slow, like it was saying, "You're next." I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every time I tried pulling over, something outside the truck would start knocking on the doors. Not banging, just tapping, over and over again, like a polite little reminder, don't stop. So I kept rolling. Somewhere along the way, the radio came back on all by itself. White noise, then a voice, female. Soft, no emotion. Manifest 47. Delivery in progress. Driver integrity 63%. ETA to reset. Unknown. Do not engage, do not remember, do not stop. I screamed at the dash. Who are you? What is this? No response. The radio cut out. But now I could hear breathing in the cab. Not mine. Slow, shaky, like someone sitting just behind the curtain of the sleeper bunk. I grabbed a flashlight, yanked the curtain back. No one. Just a scrap of paper on the mattress. Looked like it had been torn from a logbook. One sentence written in shaky handwriting. Every mile forgets a little more. The mirrors stopped showing my reflection after that. I'd glance over and see someone. But it wasn't me anymore. Sometimes it was an old man. Sometimes a teenager. Once it was a skeleton in a trucker hat, still gripping the wheel. Each one looked at me like they knew exactly where I was headed, and none of them looked surprised. At some point, I don't even remember when, I found myself passing another 47 rig that looked fresh, no rust, still idling. Cab lights on. I don't know what possessed me, but I pulled up next to it and climbed out. The ground under my boots felt like rubber, like the whole world wasn't quite real. I opened the driver's side door and looked inside. It was me, alive, sleeping. Same jacket, same face. But younger. Healthier. I stared, jaw on the floor, heart thudding. Then my sleeping self opened his eyes, looked straight at me and said, "Turn around." Before I could even breathe, he vanished. Gone. Just an empty seat. The truck shut off, like someone had flipped a breaker, and my rig, it was already 200 yards down the road, headlights on, waiting. I don't know if I ran or floated back to it. I just remember getting behind the wheel, turning the key, though I hadn't taken it out, and starting to drive. The GPS flickered back on. One word. Deliver. No destination, no time, no roads. Just that. I don't know how long I've been out. Here now. The clocks don't work, the sky doesn't change, I don't even know what day it is, but every so often the CB crackles again. And that same calm voice returns. Driver integrity 49%. Memory sync in progress. Reset pending. Do not stop. You ever get the feeling that someone's been in your truck without you noticing? Not like you left the door open at a truck stop and some junkie ransacked your glove box. I'm talking about that uneasy, skin-prickling kind of feeling. Like there's someone else in the cab with you, breathing the same air, watching you out of the corner of your own damn eye. But every time you look, there's no one there. Yeah. That started happening right around the time the man from the manifest showed up. Now I know what you're thinking. There's no manifest, right? That's what I thought too, but sometime in the middle of another endless stretch of blank road, I found a clipboard lying on the passenger seat. I swear to you, it wasn't there before. Plain brown clipboard, rusted clip, a single piece of paper with water stains and faded typewriter ink. Manifest 47. Driver, redacted. Status, incomplete cargo. Memory special instructions. Do not acknowledge passenger. What the hell? Does that mean memory? Do not acknowledge passenger? I stared at it so long I forgot I was even driving. That's when I caught movement in the side mirror. A man, standing on the side of the road, tall, thin, dressed like a dispatcher from the 80s, those pressed slacks, clip-on tie, plastic badge. Just standing there, arms at his sides, watching me pass. I didn't stop. I didn't honk, but a mile later I saw him again. And then again. And again. Same guy. Same dead stare, like he was leapfrogging ahead of me. About 30 minutes later, I think time's still not right, I glanced at the passenger seat. He was sitting there, the man from the road. Didn't see him get in. Didn't hear the door open. Just there, clipboard in hand. And what does my dumbass do? Exactly what the manifest told me not to do. I spoke. Who the hell are you? He didn't look at me, just stared forward. Real calm. You weren't supposed to speak. His voice was dry, cold, mechanical, almost. Now you'll remember things you shouldn't. I reached for the door handle, ready to throw myself out, but when I blinked, he was gone. Passenger seat empty again. Just the manifest sitting where he'd been, flipped to a second page. Now it read, "Warning. Deviation from instructions will result in accelerated degradation. Current. Status 42% integrity remaining." What does that mean? I have no clue. But I felt it. Something in me shifted. My name, it was gone again. Memories slipping like oil on wet pavement. I couldn't remember where I was from, what I looked like as a kid, the voice of my mother. It was like I was unspooling. Coming apart mile by mile, and still the GPS blinked one word: deliver. That night, or maybe that same endless twilight, I pulled into what looked like an old way station. The kind that hasn't worked since the Reagan years. Thought maybe I could find a bathroom, some coffee, anything real. But the inside was dark, dead, dust everywhere. Broken glass on the floor, coffee machine with a moldy pot still half full. And up on the wall behind the glass window was my face in a black and white photo, taped to a roster sheet titled Manifested Drivers 47 Series. My name had been scratched out. In red ink next to it, someone had written, "Spoke to the man." Integrity falling. Memory leak active. Monitor closely. That's when I heard the door creak open behind me. Turned. He was standing there, clipboard in hand. His eyes were gone, just black pits now, like someone had scooped them out. He raised a hand, pointed to my chest. "You're not the first, you know. But you might be the last. I ran. I don't remember how I got back to the truck. I just remember the cold. So cold, it felt like it came from inside the trailer." I locked the cab, turned the key, engine fired up like it had been waiting for me, and there on the dash, a new message. Memory upload. In progress. Please remain seated. I kept driving. Didn't look at the passenger seat. Didn't speak. Didn't blink. But I swear I could feel him sitting there again, smiling. Every now and then, and I catch his reflection in the side mirror, just for a split second before it's gone. And the clipboard, still there, still flipping pages when I'm not looking. Next one says, "Next stop, Route 0. If hell had a highway, it'd be Route 0. No signs, no maps, no exits. Just a straight shot into the dark. Like the earth itself forgot to finish the rest of the terrain. And I don't mean spooky backroad dark, where you're creeped out but still kinda grounded. I mean the kind of black that feels like it's staring back at you, like it knows your name or whatever's left of it, because by the time I hit Route 0, I didn't even know if I was real anymore. The road started changing after I saw the third "You Are Here" sign. No joke, no context, just that phrase spray-painted on a rusted billboard that had no map, no information, not even a damn arrow. The second one was twisted, hanging from a single bolt like it was trying to fall but couldn't. Third one was burning. I didn't even flinch. I just kept going. The odometer. Still frozen. The dashboard clock still 00. But the clipboard? That thing was updating like someone was writing it live. It now read, "Route 0 acquired. Deliver memory to terminus. No stops, no passengers, no mirrors." Yeah, that last line. That was new no mirrors. I glanced at my side mirror without thinking. Stupid. For a split second I saw every version of me from every truck I'd passed. Dozens of them, stacked behind me like ghosts in a funeral procession. Some of them waving, others clawing at the glass. One version looked directly at me. "You dropped this," he mouthed. I looked down. My name tag, clipped to my jacket. Only? It was blank. Then the radio fired up again. No dial, no station, just a voice, kid's voice. "Hey, mister, where are we going?" It came from the sleeper. I didn't answer. I think I was in the cargo. It was cold. I pulled the curtain back slowly. Empty. Of course. Then the voice whispered right in my ear. "I think you were too." I slammed the curtain shut and stomped the gas like I could outrun whatever was playing with me. The world started unraveling after that. The sky? Didn't look like sky anymore. Just static, like TV snow. And the stars? Gone. The moon? Flickering, in and out like a dying bulb. Worse still, the road under me sometimes vanished for a split second, just flashes like a blink, and I'd see nothing beneath the tires. No dirt, no pavement, just black. And then, back again, road, static sky, one lane, no end, Route 0. Somewhere deep into the nothing, I saw a sign, hand-painted, hanging crooked from a post made of bones. It read, "Delivery ahead, 1 mile." I hit the brakes so hard the trailer shuddered like it was alive. That hum, the one I told you about? It had gotten louder over the last hour. No, not louder, closer. And now it wasn't humming anymore. It was screaming. Not a voice. Not words. Just a sound like memory dying, like every face I'd ever loved being torn out of my brain one by one. And then, bang, 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 something in the trailer started pounding. Hard, so hard the rig rocked sideways. Bang, bang, bang. I should have left. I should have hit the gas. But I got out. I don't know why. Maybe I had to see it. Maybe I had to know. I went to the back of the trailer. The lock was open, hanging loose, and the doors unlatched, just a nudge from swinging wide. I didn't touch it, but the wind did, just a breath of wind. That's all it took. The doors creaked open, inch by inch. Inside, nothing at first, just shadows. Then I saw it, a box, big metal, lined with leather belts and wiring like a coffin had married a server rack. On it, a display lit up. Memory backup complete, driver 47. Ready for termination. I staggered back, and that's when I saw him, the man from Manifest, standing in the road behind me, clipboard in hand, still smiling, but this time his shirt was soaked in blood. Mine, I recognized the jacket he was wearing. It was mine. I looked down. I was wearing nothing. Just skin. Pale. Fading. "You're not the driver anymore," he said. "You're the cargo." Now the trailer slammed shut behind me on its own. Lights went out and I felt it, like falling asleep but backward, like unraveling. My name gone. My body gone. But my memories still here. Being stored. Being delivered. You know that feeling you get when you're in the middle of a long haul and the road just stretches on forever? Like you've been driving for so long that the horizon starts to bend into itself, and everything around you feels like it's folding in on your mind. That's how it felt. Not a bad kind of pressure. Not like I was being crushed under weight or suffocated. No. It was a constant hum. Like something was there, just out of sight. Some force. Some presence. Like the world outside the cab had taken a deep collective breath and was waiting for me to let go. I tried to look around, but everything inside the truck was just too pristine, too clean. The kind of sterile neatness you see in a showroom or an empty house that nobody's lived in. The gear shift gleamed like new chrome. The seats were stiff and unworn, and even the faded steering wheel with the marks I'd put on it over the years was just gone. All of it. It was like I had never existed here. I checked the rearview mirror, a reflex, and nothing. Not a soul in sight. I could barely recall the last truck stop. The faces of the drivers I'd passed. On the road, the gas stations, the little diners I used to visit every week, it all felt so distant, like it was someone else's life. A stranger's memory caught in the edge of my mind, then the Manifest, that damn clipboard. It sat there on the passenger seat, like it was waiting for me, almost like it was asking me to look at it. And I knew, if I looked, I'd see something new, something I wasn't ready for, but I couldn't stop myself. I picked it up, my fingers trembling as they gripped the cold plastic. Manifest 48, provisional driver. Activated cargo 47, preserved. Status, in transit, the last words. On the page, typed neatly, caught my eye. Thank you for your service. Your next stop will be at the terminus. Please remain en route. Do not deviate. At the bottom of the manifest there was something different, something I hadn't seen before. Final departure, driver 47. Cargo 47, closed loop. My heart skipped. I couldn't swallow. I felt like I was being pulled into something, like a chain tugging at my spine, urging me to keep going even though I didn't know why. I glanced at the mirror. The road behind me was nothing but fog. Static. And there in the passenger seat was the man from the manifest. He was standing there now. I hadn't heard him get in, hadn't seen the door open. He was just there, smiling that same cold smile. Hadn't changed, hadn't aged a day. He wore the same suit, his hair slicked back, eyes black as night. There was something in the air, a tension, like I'd been caught in a loop that I couldn't escape, no matter how hard I tried. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. His eyes, those dark pits, locked onto me. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His clipboard was still in his hands. He stared at me, and then without looking down, he wrote something on it. Slowly, deliberately. I didn't even see the pen move. When he finished, he passed it over. Without a word. Without breaking eye contact, I took it, my fingers cold. Manifest 49. Cargo 47. Permanent transport status. Inactive final driver. Redacted. And at the bottom of the page, in blood-red ink, "Thank you for your service. Now, you are the cargo." I felt the world begin to distort again. The edges of everything started to blur. The road seemed to stretch on, growing wider, endless. The truck vibrated beneath me, humming louder than before, until I could barely hear the sound of my own thoughts. My eyes flickered to the clock on the dashboard. It was still frozen at 00:00. The weight in my chest was crushing now, suffocating. I didn't know where I was, or who I was, or how much time had passed. I reached for the wheel, but my hands felt like they were sinking into the air. The truck's cabin grew colder, and the light from the dashboard began to dim. Every moment stretched on like I was stuck in a single frame of a photograph, unable to escape. The hum from the trailer wasn't just a sound anymore. It was alive, pulsating, growing louder, almost hungry. Then it hit me. The man from the manifest wasn't just watching me. He wasn't a passenger anymore. He was the driver. He was the one steering everything. I was just the cargo, and that realization was like a brick to the chest. My breath caught. My heart slammed against my ribs, but I couldn't scream. My body wouldn't obey. I looked down, at my hands. No, I couldn't look at them. I couldn't recognize them anymore. My skin was too pale, too thin. I looked in the side mirror. Behind me was nothing. Just more fog, more static. The world had folded into itself, but the mirror was still there. I could still see something. There was a reflection of something I couldn't place. Or maybe I didn't want to place it. It was me, but it wasn't. The face staring back at me was hollow, empty, eyes wide, panicked, full of dread. I turned my head to the passenger seat. He was gone, but the clipboard remained, still sitting there on the seat beside me. The paper was blank now. The words had faded, but at the bottom, scrawled in ink, were two simple words: "No more roads." I slammed my foot down on the gas. The truck roared to life beneath me, but the road didn't change, the fog didn't part. The static didn't stop. No matter how fast I drove, it was always the same. An endless stretch of black, no destination, no end. I glanced at the GPS. No route, no destination. And then it hit me. I wasn't driving the truck anymore. I was the cargo. I was part of the loop, part of the system. Part of whatever this was, this endless highway, this void of memory and forgotten names. The road ahead, the one I thought would bring me home, would never end. It would never take me to a place I recognized. It would never give me a way out. The moment I crossed that line, the moment I took the job, I'd sealed my fate. I'd become just another driver on a list, another memory to transport, and the rest of the drivers, they were part of it too, like me, like Manifest 47. I wasn't the first, and I wouldn't be the last. I looked at the mirror one last time. The same reflection stared back. Only now the eyes had changed. I was the one who had become the driver. I was the one who had become the cargo.